following is an exclusive presentation of the Ultimate Hoops Podcast Network.
It comes to a point now where there's effect and there's cause. There's cause and there's effect. And we need solutions, we need resolutions, but in order to get solutions, in order to find the resolve to this conflict that is now prevalent in this chaos, you have to start getting to the source now. And now we have to start figuring out this cause. How did this start? How did we get here? And to me, it's just, there's so many, but it's so hard because in order to, in my opinion, to truly figure out the solutions, in order to get, there has to be a united school of thought. And I think there's so much chaos that confounds the problem. It makes it more problematic when no one is really figuring out this cause. No one is offering solutions, and no one understands it because we're in the middle of the chaos of it all.
Well, and I think we're naive to think that there's one solution. You know, it obviously isn't going to be a simple, okay, let's do this. And then, okay, it's all done. America has a problem that for whatever reason other developed countries do not have. Other countries that have, just as much violence, just as much gun violence, we, for whatever reason, tend to essentially now, and I mean, for those of you who've never seen me, I'm white, Candice is black, so Candice is a woman, I'm a man. We're both around the same age, so we're coming at this from two specific angles. I've never been afraid of police officers ever, but there's a reason for that. I grew up in rural Minnesota. I graduated with 68 kids. There was 2 cops in town. We knew them, and their only goal was to bust kids for minors. That was the only thing. That was me growing up, age 1 through 18 in America. I can imagine your upbringing was obviously much different. But let me ask you this. Today, you, Candice Wiggins, are you afraid of the police?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time I drive, I'm always anxious. And especially sometimes, I just recall, and I mean, it's unbelievable. And to deny it, like I said, is just, you just can't deny it. It's just an existence that you have. It's one of those things that you can't really control. It's like Condoleezza Rice says in her memoir, Extraordinary Ordinary People. It's almost like a birth defect that you have to learn to live with. And my biggest fears are whenever I'm driving and I have like a sweatshirt on or something, or if I have a hoodie on, or, if I'm wearing a hat, or if I look like a man, because that's the biggest thing that I do when I'm driving. And so I don't get harassed. And I've been harassed more times than I could ever explain to the world. But, I try to keep my hair long, and because it's really crazy how easy it is to be harassed by just literally existing. And so, but again, my experience is completely different, I think, than most. But to me, the biggest thing is just not to deny it or to push it off as something else. It is exactly what it is. It is, your race. It's your complexion. It's how you look. It's how, in perception is reality. But I have to say, this isn't necessarily a war, because my uncle, he's my mom's brother, the closest probably to a father figure to me. And in my life, just my Uncle Daryl, he is a police officer for the Pasadena Police, and he's been one for as long as I've been alive. He's been a police officer, and he's just been my protection. He's been our family's protection, and he holds the law, and there's so much great that police officers can do, but at the same time, and I'm sure he would acknowledge this, and I think it'd be kind of cool to speak to him about this, because this has become such a problem that every voice matters in it, and I believe, but I just think that even he would admit that this is just something that this is just a problem. This is our society we're living in. This is what it is.
So whenever I guess from my perspective, whenever a young black man is shot by police officers, it's always half of the country is always on this side, half of it's always over here.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, and we don't have to go too far down this road, but it's generally political or politicized, if you will. Why is it that there are people that always want to say, yeah, but he was ... as in, yeah, but the police officer was justified because he ... Like, that's got to be one of the most frustrating things, is it not?
Absolutely, and it's because they just don't understand the experience. They don't understand it. You can't understand what you've never been through. You can't understand what you've never experienced. It's like and it's okay, because we're all ignorant. It's just in different ways. And I think a lot of times people are just ignorant about the black male experience and the black female experience in this country. People just don't know. And I understand, because people want to find a solution for something. This happened because of this. It wasn't because of any of this, and they want to justify their points of view or their reasoning behind it, and it to have comfort. We're naturally, we want conflict resolution, and I think for a lot of people, especially those who do not have that experience or do not have any type of understanding of what that experience is, and at the end of the day, you're just not gonna. You just don't understand. You just don't get it, and I think that's why I'm so appreciative of those who do try to understand it, but at the same time, they're ignorant to it, but they also, it's not like I'm not being negative towards them, because like I said, their inner self, through that ignorance, wants to solve it and figure it out and say, this is the problem, and put their stamp on it when it's really something else. And I think that the mislabeling of things and the mischaracterization of things, it works, it's really, really the problem. And I think at this point I've lost my strength to really fight it, because, you have to, it's just it causes me personally. And I know I think a little bit differently than most people do. I have a different perspective, and everyone's opinion matters. Everyone's opinion matters, and everyone's points, are important to a debate. Each side, whether they disagree or agree, but at the end of the day, there's the truth, there's what's really happening, and if that stays buried and hidden under different rhetoric or different, ideologies, then that's what's most disruptive. And I'm just waiting patiently, quietly, and hopefully that there will be a time when everyone will be comfortable with the truth of the matter of things, and everyone will be comfortable in both sides, on every side, every angle. And I think it's going to take patience, though. But I also have been observing, and I do see things. I feel like I see things fairly clearly, and I think that the most important thing is to really adopt a mentality where you're understanding of others' ignorance.
I want to press you on one thing that you said, because I think it's very interesting. I'm a big fan of the gray area. The older I get, the more I realize that everything in life is just one giant gray area. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I want everything to be black and white. It's this or it's this. Well, it's never that. There's always the middle ground. You said everyone's opinion matters, and I think that's really interesting. But does it?
Yes, because even if you're wrong, even the wrong opinions matter, because that illustrates and illuminates their ignorance. So then you're like, okay, so this group of people are completely wrong, and that helps the people that are right, because at the end of the day, it's wrong and there's right, and it's all objective. It's all subjective. I'm sorry, and it's everything. So, in my opinion, and this is one of those things where I'm quietly, I'm not injecting myself into the middle of the chaos. I'm just observing the chaos and trying to cope like many people are. But I actually appreciate hearing these views, because it allows me personally, in my personal experience, to identify the wrong thinking and how dangerous the wrong thinking can be. And I know to steer clear from wrong thinking when they suggest things that are completely invalid. And to me, there's learning there. So that's why I say that everyone's opinion matters, because we are going to have to start as individually, because it starts with each individual person is going to have to start filing into their minds where their thought process goes and what they think, which side they're on, which side they're not on, and start shaping their values based on that. And, but I still believe in, I know you said there's not one solution, but I still believe we can get there if everyone has their opinions. It's like, again, though, I really kind of want to stay out of it and just quietly observe, but I really don't think that I see that there is beginning to be this change. I think people are because of the platforms that everyone has to state their opinions. Quietly in each individual mind, people are starting to wake up to their own thoughts. And I think that's what's important, is that people start to understand what they believe. And then from there, you start to have an understanding. We're all different. We come from different backgrounds, you, Reid, and I. But at the same time, if we can understand each other's perspectives, that's how you get to the solution.
One of my favorite quotes, and I'm so cynical, and I hate to even say this, but one of my favorite quotes is, "Liking isn't helping," and that's kind of going to the whole Facebook thing. Like, somebody puts a post up and you like it, and it's like, oh, well, that was really nice of you for liking it, but it's not helping. And I think in kind of as a whole, social media, I don't want to say it isn't helping, but it obviously isn't, because we're not getting to a solution. What can young people do? So what can somebody in middle school or high school or college do today that, in your opinion, would start a change?
Study their history. Understand the history of our country, starting back. I mean, you should study the whole history of the country, but when it comes to race relations, start with the Civil War. Start there. Start with understanding our true American history, and figure out for yourself, have your own thoughts about where we started and how we got to this point. Because I think that that's the biggest thing that is blocking most people in every generation that is in America right now, is that they're just lacking the knowledge of understanding of our history. There is a reason we got to this point, and to start developing, whether it's quietly or whether it's with the groups or with interaction discussions. I love discussing things with people who don't think like me. That's the best thing you can do. But also accepting other people's opinions and understanding that not everyone is going to agree with you. Not everyone has to agree with you. And that is the freedom that we have in this country, to have our own opinions and to speak about things. But the more you understand the history, the more power you have. The more you understand leadership. Study our great leaders. There's so many of them, too many to name. Study the ones who aren't such great leaders, and develop it on your own. Have your own opinions, because that's what it needs to be. There needs to be an individual understanding of history and information, but then there also needs to be that understanding too, that not everyone is going to agree with you, and that's okay. But the more you can empower yourself to think, the more peace you will have with your own thoughts, the more peace you will have. And when you have peace with your message, when you have peace with your thoughts and ideologies, people will approach you. You'll be more approachable. You'll be more inclined to open yourself up, your heart, and to another point of view, and try to figure out how that point of view that is maybe different from yours or similar, some of the different, how can we blend that idea together to come to a common goal? But I think that it starts with each individual self, and I think we're in the digital age, we're in the information age. It's not hard to get information like it was many years ago. There's ways, and you can, and so that's what I think. I think it's about understanding yourself, self-empowerment, and then from there, building relationships with those who think like you and don't think like you.
I don't feel comfortable. Like, I feel like and I'm very opinionated, and I'll let you know anything, but I feel like my voice in this doesn't count, doesn't matter, because I don't have, because I don't have the same upbringing. I don't get it like maybe, you do. So it's strange because that's not necessarily fair. But it's just like, I can't relate, I think. And I know that I can't relate. So how I want to transition that into a question for you is, you have a lot of Twitter followers. You could be an agent of change if you wanted. So anybody could. What stops you, or, from wanting to do that, or kind of what's your mindset about that? Because that's such a controversy, I think. Oh, this person is so famous, but yet they don't want to, make a difference, or they do want to make it. What are your mindsets when it comes to that?
Well, my mindset is exactly what I discussed about me really taking the time to individually develop my ideology, so that when I do, this is communication, this is mass communication, and this is powerful. I really want to have a solid understanding in my experience before, it's not being afraid of your opinions, but to me, it's very important. And I personally have lived through something that I never thought I could survive. And that was when my dad died from AIDS, and just what happened to his whole entire life, what happened to his name. And just, I literally had to watch and wait and in silence, and in buried in slander, buried in shame, buried in it, and had to wait for 20 years for someone to dig the hole out and say, come on out. You don't have to live in this shame anymore. I've experienced that. 20 years. So I know how important it is to be patient, to be forgiving, to be understanding, to know and have hope that the future will be brighter. But in my opinion, it's very important, and I've really been taught that lesson of patience through my life experience with that, and also with my father. It's more than just AIDS; it was race as well. My father was a huge target, and he was in terms of the things that he went through that our family, we don't discuss, we haven't discussed. Just in his life, with the racism that he faced his whole entire life. And there's a lot of things there's a lot of opinions that I have, that we have as our family, that we've held to, because like I said, it's important to really develop, to understand the history, to learn more, to discover more, to understand who came before you, leadership. Those are things carry great responsibilities, and I just don't take that lightly. So for me, I know that when the time is right, and this is a huge day for me, even speaking like this, this is going to be far reaching, I think. But for me, it's not, I can't speak for all. I don't even want to call myself a celebrity, because I am not a celeb. I don't know. For me, you know, I can't speak for all those who have a platform. I certainly have one, but I think, you know, it's so important to just develop what and to wait and see and be when you're called to a certain position, to not be afraid of your opinions, but also it takes a lot too, because you have to understand, and this is something that I learned as well, not everyone's going to want to hear what you have to say, and not everyone's going to agree with you. And that's a hard thing you have to be psychologically prepared for that. And I think, you know, a lot of people who are in positions to say something first of all, they're not prepared for what they feel. They haven't developed what they think, and they're not sure. And a lot of times you go on emotion, and when you go on emotion and your feelings and your own mind, your own will, sometimes that is the worst thing you can do, because it is fleeting. You know, you really have to have intuition. You really have to have, you know, you have to be consciously aware of what you're really saying and your essence of it. And to me, to do that, you have to be a student of your thought. So, you know, and a lot of people aren't psychologically prepared for that kind of response. They're not prepared. So if they hear something, like if I hear something in response to this, I'll be psychologically prepared for that, because I've been, you know, training my mind and what my opinions are for so many years that I feel very strongly about it. But that's what I would say is a reason why that happens a lot less in the celeb world, you know?
So I personally am not optimistic that things are going to get any better anytime soon. I just don't have really any faith in the decision makers, if you will, the quote unquote decision makers, that anything's going to change because of what I mentioned earlier. Our society, we forget things really quickly. Again, not the people directly affected. I want to make that very clear. They're not going to forget this forever. But your general society, you know, CBS Evening News, you know, the news type media, you know, whatever, that moves on quickly. I'm not optimistic anything's going to change. I think it's only going to get worse. Are you optimistic?
I think things are going to get worse before they get better, certainly. I certainly think that too. But I'm optimistic in the fact that I have faith in people, like you were saying, are going to start being, you know, just because the media decides they're moving on doesn't mean that society is moving on. And I think that, like I said, there's responsibility that I'm challenging the young generation out there to start thinking about where everyone has a position in it. And you said, Reid, you were so wrong. Your opinion does matter, and your voice does matter. It does count. And I think it's important that you acknowledge where you stand and that isolation that you feel. It's not much different than it was, you know, 50, 60 years ago. So it's very important, because now we're so relying on this communication aspect of it, especially with modern technology, that to me, that's the reason why I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because we have opportunities. Now, what we do with these opportunities we're monumental. We're at a crossroads with where we go now, but I feel I'm optimistic. I think things are going to get worse before they get better, certainly. But I'm optimistic because I believe that there will be people in all generations, all, you know, in coming up that are going to say, wait a minute, hold on a second. I have this idea. I have this passion. And I think that there will be a rising of leadership. I do believe in that. I hope to contribute to that any way I can. And I think that there are many people that think like me, that just because the media says it's over for this week, it's not, but see, the only way that a revolution is going to spark or something is going to change, and we've got to be patient, is that people start thinking about things, what they would do specifically, what they think specifically, counter arguments to those who are wrong, but that are rational. But like I said, it's going to take us, we're going to have to be students of history and students of leadership. Are you one of the 99% of basketball players who never played professional basketball? Are you tired of trying to live your hoop dreams in the same old rec basketball leagues? At Ultimate Hoops, we believe that all basketball players should be treated like a professional. And with Ultimate Hoops League, we have completely revolutionized recreational basketball. With the Ultimate Hoops League, you'll get full online stats for every game, including box scores, videos, photos, power rankings, and your own personal profile that tracks your stats for your entire career. And you can compare your stats with the thousands of other Ultimate Hoops players across the US and Canada. Most Ultimate Hoops leagues cost under $100 a season, which includes 8 regular season games played on Lifetime Fitness's professional quality basketball courts. No matter what your skill level is, the Ultimate Hoops League is the place to take your talents to. Join the largest recreational basketball league in America, the Ultimate Hoops League, by going to uhlife.com to get started. A new season starts in July, so go to uhlife.com now and start getting treated like a professional today.
Honestly, I don't know. And listening to you has been very informative, because I think your answer to what needs to start to be done in terms of, educating yourself, I think that's brilliant. Educating yourself on the history of this country. I think the more educated people we have, the better. And it's like those agents of change, people that can run for office, can become police chiefs. Maybe there's a kid from the inner city that is so affected by what happened today that he's like, you know what? I'm going to become the police chief of St. Paul. And come hell or high water, in 20 years, that will be me. I will become that person, and I will make change myself. And it's like that all starts with educating yourself. So I think that's a really, and I didn't mean to belittle it earlier by saying that it's too rational. I mean, it is too rational. But I think it's wonderful. I think that's where it needs to start. Any final thoughts from you? Obviously, we could go on about this all day.
No, just that, this has affected me. The thing that affects me that just keeps ringing in my mind is just how families are being torn asunder by it. This is a man who, these are both men who had children. And that's where I think the problem that I have the most with it is growing up without a father and just understanding what that means for the kids, the victims, and how they're going to have to deal and grieve with this loss. That's really where it hurts, because it's just so painful, and I don't even want to break down right now, because so it's hard for me. I have to really guard my heart, because these are fatherless children now, and the circumstances to how they have to live with that for the rest of their life. And that's what I wish that you had mentioned earlier about, he didn't even, it's like, when does the life of a soul, how soulless can you be to react and to do things like that, and to have that power? And it's completely unfair. But I think the biggest thing is to, once people start becoming aware of how unfair and why it's unfair. I have that's the only hope that I can really be left with is just those thoughts about fatherless children, about the impact that this has, and the soulless nature of it, and why it's so unfair.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't just names on a page. These aren't just names in a newspaper. These are actual human beings that are going to be affected by it for the next 65 years, or until they pass, whenever that is. And I think people forget that. I think I forget that too. It's like you see it on the news and it's quick, and it's or you see something on the news about a car accident or about somebody getting sick from bad meat or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, but then you forget like those are real people. Like, they have moms and sisters and brothers, and they don't forget about that stuff. So yeah, it's a depressing talk, and I think we both got very candid today.
We did. Yeah.
I did. So thank you, Candice Wiggins, for just talking about it, being candid about it. I appreciated your thoughts. I learned a bit, for sure. And, I'm sorry that we're even talking about it.
Very necessary.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Candid with Candice Wiggins. Remember, you can subscribe to the Ultimate Hoops Podcast Network on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, and listen and download other podcasts like The Wild Card with Luke Hanlon, Recreation Nation with Reed Nelson, The Dream League Insider, and the Short Corner Podcast. Thanks to Ultimate Hoops and Lifetime Fitness who made this all possible. If you want to learn more about Ultimate Hoops and all of our basketball products, go to uhlife.com. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode of Candid with Candice Wiggins.